Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to Jamie Photography. So in today's tutorial, we're going to talk about masks and how we use masks and how you can be very flexible and bring some real drama to your images. The raw file for this particular tutorial is actually linked in the comments below, so feel free to download and follow along. But I would ask if you could respect my copyright. If you do use the image on social media, please give credit to Jamie Photography. It'd be much appreciated. So what we're going to do is going to take this high contrast daytime shot of Southwark Bridge in London, crossing the Thames, and we're going to turn it into a high drama black and white. Now, high contrast shots like this, where you have blue sky, lots of sun, big shadows, do lend themselves to black and white photography. And so we're going to convert this image using masks. And I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. So if you feel that I'm going a bit fast, remember you can always hit the space bar in the video, pause, or even go back and watch that little bit again to show you how I'm doing the masking. So I'm going to take this image here. As you can see, 1/160th of a second, f10, shot at ISO 100, 18 millimeters, and it was a nice day. So we're going to turn this into some drama. So first thing I'm going to do, my workflow is always about perspective first. I want to be sure that I can get the perspective right, and then I want to crop the image to make sure that I'm happy that we can go forward and spend some time on this. So first thing I'm going to do is go down to transform, and I'm going to grab guided over on the right hand side here, and then I'm going to pick up a couple of straight lines on one side or the other of the image. So one of these pillars over here on this building here, I'm just going to grab the center of the pillar, go down to the center of the pillar at the bottom, looking at the little magnified box, and then I'm going to come over onto this bridge pier here. I'm going to pick up this edge of this brickwork, and I'm going to go down before it changes direction there, and I'm just going to capture that as well. So that gets everything relatively straight. I'm also going to try and pull a horizontal, so I'm going to go down to the waterline here, and I'm going to go down to the waterline further down the river there, and I'm just going to click on that. So now you can see we've got two verticals and the horizontal, so it's relatively the perspective is relatively well now maintained. So I'm going to go back to the basics function, so I'm going to click on the basics slider here, go back to the top here, and then I'm going to click on crop. So we need to look at the crop that we want to use for this. Now there's a lot of dark shadow down here. Now I know I can open up the shadows here, and that will give us a little bit more of what we've got underneath here, and you can see it really lightens up the underside of the bridge by just pulling that shadows slider all the way over. So we can now see where we want to be, but I don't really want this piece of wood in the shot, so I'm going to bring the bottom up just to cut that off there as such. And then I'm just going to pull from the right here. I'm just going to keep that lantern here in the shot. Now this building here, do I want the whole building in the shot? So should I just move it to this position here and have the whole building in the shot? I've got to bring the sky down to balance off this lower piece at the bottom here, so I will need to put the bridge somewhere in the center. So that is going to make for rather a large panoramic view. So actually I'm going to bring this across, and I'm going to either just bring in the edge of that, or I'm going to come all the way across here and put the large building in the rear there on the rule of thirds line, which I think sits quite well, so we can shoot the bridge. So hit return, and that will move us into that cropped position. Now back in the basics, I'm going to bring down the highlights, so gives you a little bit of a sort of almost an HDR look, because we've got so much dynamic range in these shots these days. I'm going to do my blacks and whites, so I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key, and whilst holding that down, I'm going to slide the slider of the whites up until I see some white. Now remember, up in the top corner, you have the top left, the right corner, you have the clipping triangles on the histogram. So as you're moving the whites up, you can watch that go to white, which means it's fully clipped, and then you've got two shades of blue. You've got white, sort of teal, turquoise, and then blue, and then off. So blue is 90%, teal is 95%. So I'm going to go with 90%. I'm going to keep holding down the Option or Alt key, and I'm going to move the black slider down till I see some blacks appear. Same thing, if you look at the top left of the histogram, you'll see that the triangle changes color from red, yellow, white. White's 100% clipped. So in this case, I'm going to go 95%, I'm going to go yellow, so there is some blacks in the shot. So we've got the full dynamic range of the actual image now. So I'm quite happy with that. So what we're now going to do is we're just going to drop the overall exposure down by around about 1 stop. Now you might say, why would you do that? Well, we're going to relight the scene, and what we want to do is we want to relight the scene so that we bring a lot of drama to the image, so we have a lot of dodge and burning, if you like. So what we're going to do now is now we've dropped that down to -1. I want to actually work on the bridge now, and this is where the masking comes into play. So if you go to masks up here in the top right here, so you've got objects, you've got brush, you've got linear gradient and radial gradient, and then you've got some ranges. And if you click on ranges, it will open up three ranges that you can use. The depth range isn't shown at the moment because that's to do with the depth of the image, and there's nothing close here. Everything is in the mid to the background. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by considering where we want to light this bridge firstly. Now I think the arches need to be illuminated a little bit more, and the shadow areas need to be illuminated a little bit more. Now you can do that with a brush, and that will give you a consistent light of that area, but what I like to use is a radial gradient. So if I take a radial gradient, we'll do this middle one first. I've selected the radial gradient. I'm now going to pull out quite a large radial gradient. I'm going to put the center of the radial gradient where the light is most prominent in the arch. I'm then going to pull this down so you can see it covers that area, and then I'm going to raise the exposure back up by 1 stop, maybe a little bit more, 1.25. There we go. Now if you do struggle with trying to get exactly the number you want, there I couldn't get 125 by just moving the mouse, you can just click on that white box and then type in 1.25, enter, and you've got your 1.25. So now we've done that, we've got this much brighter than we want to do. In fact, I want to open up the shadows a little bit more as well. So just to bring, well, all the way up there, look, just to bring this up a little bit more. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a tint, a temperature, sorry, of about +20, just to bring the color up. Now you might say, well, why are you messing around with color if we're going to do this and turn this into a black and white? Well, you'll see as we go through that the color is really what gives us the power as we go into black and white. So if you want to do black and white photography, I urge you to shoot in color and then do the post process and then convert to black and white, and I'll show you how that works. So we've opened the shadows up, we've added a bit of temp. I might even add a little bit of saturation to that, and I'm going to add a little bit of clarity to that as well, about +25 on the clarity. So these, and maybe even a little bit on the texture as well, about 5 on the texture. So it just really opens this arch up under here. So that's looking pretty good, but we don't want the whole bridge and the sky up here illuminated and all the water illuminated with this shot, and certainly not the background over in the distance. So what we do need to do is we need to mask this actual mask. So we need to crop around the mask to get the area that we want to work with. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here, going to go into 100. And we're going to look at how we now crop around this area. So first thing I'm going to do is, if I hover over the mask, you can see that's the radial gradient mask that we've got. If I subtract a brush, okay, and I then go in and select very low feather, about 10% feather, and 100% flow. So we're going to subtract 100% away. So if I go over here, you'll see I will take 100% of that mask away. So what we need to do is run along this edge here to get back to that point. Now, a few of us have super steady hands, so what I tend to do is click the edge of the brush on the edge of the shadow about here, and then I move up to the same point with a little tiny overlap, hold down the shift key and click again. So you just going along this edge here. So I'm just going to make sure we got that. So click, shift, click, shift, click, and that just brings us up and around. I'm just going to go across there, and then we can make the brush bigger. As long as we don't go over the edge, we can take away the rest of that a radial gradient. And we're going to do the same across the top here. We're just going to take the edge of the brush. In fact, I'm going to bring the feather down to 0 now, because we're going to come along this tight edge here. And I'm just going to shift click, shift click, shift click, and just work our way around the edge of that bridge by clicking, holding down the shift key as we go, so we get little straight lines coming across. Now, I want this bit to be illuminated, and I want this bit to be illuminated a little bit, but I'm going to just cut a line across there for now. I'm going to make my brush big again and just take that top piece out that we didn't want to have. There we go. Just take those out. And the same round here, we're going to come in on the edge of this. We don't want the background here, so I'm just going to click, shift click, and just work our way around these edges as such, like that. And as we say, we don't want the water. Just keep that feather at 0. We don't want the water illuminated. So just going to come around there. That was just a freehand paint there, and just up there. So just going to take that out as well. So what we've got, if I hover over the mask, you'll see that we've just got the bridge section now masked out. There are a few areas that we need to deal with, so I'm just going to take out the auto mask there, and I'm just going to go around again, hover over the mask. You can see where we haven't been in this image. So let's just go back in there. I'm just going to run around the edge of that bridge there. Right. So if I hover over, there you can see that's how we've taken that radial mask and we've subtracted away the areas we don't want to light. Now if I zoom out, you'll see that the radial was quite a bit larger. If I hover over the mask again, you can see there's some areas over here on this bridge pier. So taking that big, I'm just going to go back round, making sure we don't overlap anything where we've been. Check again. Yeah. And we now only have that part of the bridge masked out. So hopefully that made sense to you. I'm going to do the other bridge arches now to go forward, but that's what we're aiming to do. So now if I go down to the sliders related to this mask, you can see it's there. I can make that brighter or I can make that darker, only that area, by moving the slider over here. I'll put that back to 1.25. So let's take another radial gradient. Now you might ask, well, why don't you just click on there, right click, and duplicate the mask? And the problem with that is that the mask, which you can see there, includes the subtraction brush, which is that one. So if I duplicate the mask, that subtraction brush will interfere with the other mask that I do. And all I'm doing is hovering over the mask over here. As you can see over here, there's the mask, and there's the brush, and there's the radial gradient. You just move over them, you can see very clearly. So that's the mask, the positive, that's the negative, and that's the radial gradient. So that tells you what we've done. So really what we need to do is create a new mask. But then you might also say, well, why don't we just right click and duplicate the radial gradient? Well, we could do that as well. In doing that, you preserve the settings that are associated with that radial gradient. But if you alter the new radial gradient, it will alter the other radial gradient because they're the same radial gradient. So that's why I'm going to create a new radial gradient over here. I'm going to take another one, totally independent of the one that we just did. Put the brightness on the part of the bridge where we want it to be brightest. Bring this back. And then same thing again. I'm going to go slightly brighter this time because it's closer. So I'm going to go to 1.35. A little bit of contrast this time. I'm going to open up the shadows. and down the highlights just a little bit. I'm going to go down to clarity, add in some clarity, about 25%, and 5 on the texture. We're going to add that temp in. Before, remember, we went to 20, so I'm going to put 20 in there just to match the colors. I can probably go just a little bit more just to bring that together. That's nice. And then we need to subtract the brush as we did previously. So within the mask, there's the mask, the radial gradient. Yeah, we're going to subtract the brush. This time I'm going to have a sharp edge. So I'm going feather 0, flow 100%. Auto mask is turned off. And we're going to zoom in so we can be a little bit closer. To move over, hold down the space bar and then just click your left mouse to move left or right. So we're just going to start up here, and we're going to take a not too big a brush here. And the reason you don't go too big with the brush is you end up with quite a large radius. So I'm going to click in that top corner there. I'm just going to overhang slightly, and I'm just going to work my way around. I just need to make sure we've got that one there. There we go. And I'm just taking small clicks as we go, and just work your way along the edge of that line. A little bit smaller brush when we get to here because we've got this little detail here. That's it. I'm just going to go around there, down there. Just going to cut that edge away there. You see it was quite bright. So just click in there, just click, shift click, shift click. Actually, I'm following the wrong line here. What we need to do is go back up to that point there. We do not need to follow that pier because that's already lit by the sunlight. So I'm just going to cut back into here, and we're going to follow this shadow line. And I'm just holding down that shift key. That's it. Just make my brush bigger to take out the bit that we don't want. There we go. Brush bigger still. And because we're on 100% flow, we can remove that. So move it over by holding down the space bar. I'm going to click at the bottom here. I'm just going to follow the water line edge here. I don't want the water line illuminated, and I'm just going to come back up this side. There we go. Just working my way around. And then like before, we're just going to come up on top of this pier here, and we're going to cut across here to this piece, and then we're just going to come down on the edge of that bridge line there. And the same thing, we're just going to shift click this subtraction brush, just overlapping the edge of the bridge ever so slightly, just over it, that edge, the colored edge difference between the teal and the cream. There we go. Make my brush bigger, and I'll make my brush bigger by wheeling the mouse or by using the square bracket keys next to your turn key. That works as well. So and then when we think we've got everything, we'll zoom out, go back to fit, we'll hover over the mask. There you go. You can see the water below the bridge needs to be done, and there's a little bit around the sides here. So I'm just going to take my big brush here, just going to cut across there, and then come back over the top there. So hovering over, there we go. The mask is just now the bridge as we did previously. So that's looking pretty good. We're going to do the other ones over here. So I'm going to zoom in slightly, go back to 100. Now these are getting smaller, and to speed things up, what I can do is create a new mask, new radial gradient, and I can take a slightly bigger one like this, and I can pull it out a little bit more, and we can do all three with this one mask. So I'm going to just move that over there a little bit. So same thing, we're going to subtract a brush. Brush is 0 feather, 100% flow, and we're going to work our way around just like we did before. So I'm going to go a bit quicker this time. So we're using that shift click technique to remove the mask. There we go. And I'm just going around the edge of the bridge here. That's it. Just going to make that a little bit smaller so I don't get impact on this other one, because we're going to want to keep that. That's it. And then we're just going to go back over the top of this bridge. So we're click, shift click, just to run around that edge there. Same again. Let's go up there. And I'm just shift clicking my way around. So we're removing the radial gradient. Remember, that's what we're trying to do here. Removing the radial gradient. And we're just going to tuck into the water here. Go around these piers. Just like this. So it's the piers, the bridge piers, that will be left inside the mask. So I'm just made my brush a little bit bigger. I'm just washing away the remainders of the radial gradient that we don't need anymore. Oh, I touched that. If you noticed, I touched that there, so I can control or command Z to just go back so I don't cover over that area there. So I'm just going to try that again without going too far. Smaller brush just to jump in there. Yep. So if I hover over the mask, yeah, that's what we're seeing. So now if I go back to large scale, there we go, you'll see that there's still some. So I'm still in brush. If I hover over the brush, you can see where I've been, but you also see where I've not been there. So I'm just going to take those areas out as well. So there we go. So now we just need to do the sliders the same way. This could be a little bit dimmer because it's further away. So the exposure for this mask is going to be probably 1.10. That looks all right. I'm going to open up the shadows, not so much. Bring down the highlights just a little bit. I'm going to add in some temps, so let's add in 20 as we did before. Yeah, that looks okay. And then we're going to just add in 5 on texture and 25 on clarity. And I think that looks pretty good. So we've illuminated the arches. So what we do need to do is try to control the shadow at the bottom and do something with the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new mask. Firstly, I'm going to do the sky. So I'm going to select the sky. Okay, so the mask will select the sky. But I'm going to go to the little 3 dots to the right of the sky in the mask. Click on that and intersect mask with another mask. So what I want to do is I want the whole sky to be the subject of my change in exposure, but I want it to blend from 100% at the top to 0 at the bottom. So I'm going to intersect the sky mask with a linear gradient, okay? And now I'm going to draw that linear gradient from the top down like this, and I'm going to bring it across at an angle similar to the bridge. So this is 100% of whatever I do, and this is 0% of whatever I do and beyond. So if I now go to exposure and reduce the exposure for that sky, as you can see, it's reduced it at the top. I'm going to actually not go quite as far as that. I'm probably going to go to about probably minus 1.2, not plus 1.2, sorry, minus 1.2. And I'm going to add a little bit more blue in as well. You can never have too much blue. It looks good. Remember, we're going black and white, so you can be bold with your colours. I'm going to add a little contrast to the top of the image there, so about plus 30. And I'm going to add some clarity. Clarity always helps skies. Now that's starting to look a little bit better. I might pull this line back just a little bit so it's brighter down here. That's looking okay. So I'm happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is create another mask and another just linear gradient, and I'm just going to bring in that top corner there like that and just darken that even more. So we get almost a black appearing. Let me take the text out of the way. You get almost a black appearing in that top left corner. So we've got a lot of contrast in the sky. Now, need to do the same with the bottom down here. So create another mask, linear gradient. This time I'm going to pull up from the bottom, and I'm just going to pull up sort of towards the bridge at the similar sort of angle. So As you can see, these linear gradients are bigger on the left and smaller on the right. You see, smaller here, bigger here. Same with the sky. And that's because the bridge is falling away. So it creates depth when we create a gradient going down into that sort of lower corner. So I'm just going to reduce the exposure here by about 1.6. I think minus 1.6. So no, minus 1.65 works. And then I'm going to do another. So I can, this time if I want to, I can right click on this one and duplicate the linear gradient. But this time make it a little bit smaller. Bring it down into this bottom corner a little bit more. And then I can darken that one down a little, just a little bit more. Not too much, but it just takes out that little shadow line that we saw down there. Just gonna bring that up a little bit there. So just going to back him off a little bit. You know what? I'm actually not going to use, I'm just going to switch that one off. You can turn the little eye on or off here if you want to. I'm just actually going to turn that eye off for that second one. I'm going to create a new linear gradient coming in from the bottom here. And I'm just going to darken that off a little bit. There we go. Do you see how that just took that away? And this one is a little bit taller. This one comes up into the image a little bit more. That one has been switched off. We can, if we wish, right click and delete mask 6. Did I want to do that? No. So Command Z or Control Z puts it back. There we go. So I'm going to be, I think, happy to do that. I'm just going to add a little bit of warmth to that mask. Go back into 7. Add a little bit of warmth, go back into 6, add a little bit of warmth. Because remember, it's going black and white, so we can be quite bold with the colours. So we're getting somewhere near. What I do want to do is just pick up this ironwork of the bridge here. So to do that, I'm going to go to a new mask, and I'm going to go down to colour range. You can see here colour range. I'm going to click on colour range. Now you get a little pipette that you can use. Now this pipette is going to pick up the colour. Wherever you click, it's going to pick up the colour. So I want the colour of this bridge. So I'm going to click here in the centre of this beam here. I'm just going to click once. And what the mask is going to do is going to pick everything that's similar colour to that. All right. So you can see most of it's a similar colour, but in the color range, there's a slider, refine slider. And if you move this to the left or to the right, it will spread the amount of color that's close to the color you selected to include. And if you go down, it will decrease. So if I go down, you'll see eventually you just get to the bridge. You can see that, which is that color. And the background, there are a few bits and pieces that are there, and there's a little bit along these piers here. If I come up just a little bit more, just to make sure that we've got everything there, that looks about right. So, but we don't want the face of these bridge piers, and we certainly don't want the bridge in the background captured by this. So what we're going to do is we're going to, within the mask here, we're going to subtract a brush. We're going to have the feather on 0, flow on 100, and we are just going to go around and remove these areas that we don't want to be included in this mask. Can you see I'm literally just painting away the things that we don't want to be included in the mask? And there we go. So just going along the top of the bridge railings there. I don't really want the street lights included either, so I'm just going to go along there like such. So now we just have the bridge itself illuminated. So what we can do now is we can go down to the sliders for this, just for the bridge, and we can boost the exposure. We can bring the exposure up. We can make the bridge piers brighter, as you can see. So we'll bring them up to +1. So click there, 1. We're going to bring up the contrast a little bit on the bridge by about 15. Perfect. Just going to open up the shadows a little bit on the bridge. Just helps to bring that alive a little bit. And we can also add a little bit of saturation. There we go, about 25 on saturation. So what it's done is livened up the brightness of this front bridge pier. It's looking pretty good. Now we're getting close to ready to go to black and white, but I do want to pick these buildings up in the distance, and I want to sort of brighten this up. So I want to bring some light in from the right hand side. The sun clearly is over on the right hand side, so I'm going to create a new mask. I'm going to go to radial gradient. I'm going to pick a pretty big radial gradient like this. Just slope it downwards as though the sun was up that way, and pull it right the way across like this. And then what we can do is we can brighten this radial gradient. Here we go. We can bring the brightness up over there. I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit so we keep and add a little bit of contrast just to keep those clouds popping up there, which looks really, really good. So we've got that light coming in. See, the front of the building is lit up and it's really brought that alive. I might even try to add some warmth to that shot coming in. There we go. Just bring that up to plus 60. A little tiny bit of magenta just to correct. So about 10 on magenta, I think, just to correct the colour. And I might even bring the saturation up just a little bit more. There we go. So you've got this sort of brightness coming in, and it's sort of pulling in from the side there. Now, you may not want it on the front of the bridge here. Actually, it works quite well. I'm quite happy with it on there, and I'm happy with that sort of brightness coming in from that side. So I think we're in a good position. So I'm going to go back to basics. We've got where we want to be. Now we're going to go black and white. So to do that, before I go black and white, I get rather excited about color, because I find that it's the color that really makes the black and white work. Now that is a complete contradiction, right? It's the color that makes the black and white work. But before you go black and white, you want to create color contrast. You want to exaggerate the color, and I'll show you why. If I just click over to black and white now, it's not a bad black and white. That's okay. Okay, so you can see black and white at the top of your basic functions here. If I go back to where we were with color, if I now go down to vibrance and pop in a whole chunk of vibrance, I'm going to put in plus 40 on vibrance. I'm going to increase the saturation by 25, right? It's starting to look awful now, right? Okay, too much. I'm going to increase the clarity by about 20. A little bit more texture, not a lot, about 5. And I'm going to bring up some contrast, just a little bit of contrast. And I'm just going to brighten that scene. I'm going to bring it up to probably around about 0.5. There we go. So it really doesn't work, okay? But now let's go black and white. Okay, now really starting to pop, yeah? So what I'm going to do also is I'm just going to maybe try bringing up the contrast a little bit more. That's working quite well. I'm going to perhaps just bring up the clarity a little bit more. I'm going to go up to plus 40. Right, that really is starting to pop. I'm just going to back the textures off, just back down to 0, because they're just a bit too much. And the whites are just a little bit too harsh. So I'm just going to back the whites off just a little bit, about plus 35. I'm going to brighten the scene a little bit more. I'm going to come up to about 0.25, yeah, and then may even bring that brightness back up to 0. Probably too much, probably minus 15. A little bit more contrast, going to plus 50. That's a bit much, so I'm going to go back down to plus 40. Okay, that's looking all right. And I think we're pretty well there. We really sort of want to make this central area pop, particularly where the buildings are over here. So I'm just going to go back into a mask, create a new mask with a brush. This time I'm going to feather it 100% and flow it 50. And I'm going to turn up the clarity, another 40 on clarity, and another 5 on texture. And I'm just going to paint these buildings in just a little bit more as we come across there, just to pick that up. And I might even just pick up these bridge piers just a little bit there. So you're selectively adding contrast and clarity to the image. And And I think we're pretty well there. The last thing I'll do is I'm just going to check the noise. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put a little bit of noise reduction in, just 10. I'm going to sharpen to 50. And then the masking, I'll hold down the Option or Alt key, just move the mask over until we just move away. There we go, just slide up. So about 32 there. And what that's done is that's allowed that little bit of luminance to take place on the background, so there is no noise. So if I do zoom in there, you'll see that there is little noise there. That airplane vapor trail is a little bit distracting, so I'm just going to go into the heal tool here. I'm going to select heal, which is the middle one. I put the feather at 100, occupancy at 100. I'm going to take a small brush, click at the end there, and shift click at the rear, shift click, and it should, there we go, it should get rid of it. I'm going to undo that, Command Z, and what I'm going to do is just, because I think I did it 3 times, I'm just going to, there we go, I'm just going to make the brush a little bit bigger and try again. Hold down the shift key. There we go, that's better. Right. So we're going to go back here. And I think just to finish this image off, I'm going to go down to effects on the right hand side. I'm going to add a post crop vignette, just a little bit of one, about 15. And important when you do post crop vignettes, take the feather, slide it to 100. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the basic function. It's a bit harsh, so I'm just going to go back up to the basic functions. Just going to back off the contrast a little bit, maybe down to 25. That's it. And I think we've got ourselves, maybe got ourselves an image. Maybe just try to bring that brightness back up to 0. Yeah, I'm going to do one last thing because it's bothering me that the brightness is just burning through in a couple of areas. So I'm going to take one more mask, take a radial gradient, take a big radial gradient here, come in from this side, just like that, just turn that here. And all I'm going to do is reduce the highlights. Because we're already 100% on the highlight slider, we can always add another one in. So I'm going to go -30. And that's it. I think I'm very happy with that. So if you enjoyed that, I'd love you to like the video. That'd be wonderful. If you like what I'm doing on YouTube, I'd love you to subscribe to continue along with my adventure and have fun as I'm having fun doing these videos. So yeah, feel free to comment below. Until the next time, bye bye for now.